The 16 Days of Activism campaign is well underway, with questions raised about whose responsibility it is to build safer communities. Now, some argue that creating a safer South Africa requires government, civil society, academia and business working together on this common goal. Well, joining us now is Nikita Delvaria, who is the co-founder of Safe Space RSA. A very good afternoon to you and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Let's start off with you just telling us what exactly Safe Space RSA is about.
So before I'd like to go into immense detail, I think it's only fitting that we give some contextual background as to why we started Safe Space. The other co-founding director, Chloe Homer, and myself, both survivors of gender-based violence, understood that the cases that had spiked during the beginning of the hard lockdown in South Africa, where there were nearly, I think it was about 300,000 calls made in the first couple of days, meant that only 2 in 10 women actually report these incidences. So the number was both minuscule and not true in terms of those women actually making calls out of desperation. So we then understood the gravity of this number, and we thought long and hard about how we would approach gender-based violence holistically in a way that no longer is reactionary and more preventative. So we wanted to approach gender-based violence in a holistic way by creating gender-based violence-free minds, homes, and societies for women and the LGBTI plus community. It was then that we created the platform for women to speak out in a way that actually matters. Quiet is not the rent that we pay for women to live in this world as women. It is then that we created safe spaces and early warning systems through social awareness. So by logging incidences of gender-based violence that are not necessarily reportable crimes, one is able to engage with how safe an area is through these interactive posts.
Can you give us a breakdown of some of those incidents that are reported, those that you say are reportable crimes and the unreportable crimes, as you put it?
So as you would know, as a woman, different things scare us all in very different ways. So for some women like me, I feel being outnumbered by men is really terrible. While others, it's being catcalled, while some, it's just being alone. So yesterday, a friend of mine who was walking in Greenside was stopped 3 or 4 times by cars of men just asking if she needed a lift or if she would give them her number. And this, as you can imagine, made her feel incredibly unsafe. So we can't go to police station and report that we've been catcalled. We can't go and say that we've been groped or somebody followed us or just made us feel unsafe. So even though we feel violated, these are not reportable crimes. But at Safe Space, it is though. So logging whatever incidents you experience or incidents that you might have witnessed as a bystander, you automatically make safer spaces for the next woman. Once these incidences are then reported, we go back into these areas and rehabilitate them by means of working with civil society, local government, by taking data to them and saying, but councillor, what are you doing to make this area safe or gender-based violence free in your ward? We're then able to work with them and use data by ensuring that we have tangible solutions to these hotspots, like, for instance, mask lighting or adequate lighting, for instance, or just visible policing, grass cutting, things that make women feel safer in a place that looks safer.
And do councillors actually respond swiftly to your calls?
So yes, they do. I feel like it's really important for us to all be able to hold everyone accountable. So it's not just going to be gone away with overnight. It's not something that we're all just going to be able to put as a responsibility to just councillors or just police. I feel like the solution starts with us. So if we're all collective about the way that we're going to deal with gender-based violence, we have a greater chance of having to overcome it.
Well, that brings us to my question about who you actually think is responsible for building safer communities. Just elaborate on that.
I feel like it starts at home. So patriarchy is so deeply ingrained in our societies that we don't necessarily recognize it. So we romanticize things like tempers and we romanticize jealousy, when in fact we need to be able to hold those notions accountable in the terms that we recognize it for what it actually is. So we start at home. We teach our boys differently. We teach our girls what to expect and what to not compromise on. I feel like it's really important that we start in the spaces that we have control over. We can't control our perpetrators. We cannot control law enforcement. We can't control the way society deals with gender-based violence in terms of making victims or blaming victims or shaming victims. But what we do have control over is our innate ability to just have control over our surroundings.
And when it comes to some of the reports that have come through, you gave examples of perhaps like high grass in certain areas or very dim lighting. When would a place be flagged as a hotspot?
So it is important, firstly, to realize that as women, we have power over our surroundings, like I said. We get the data from living, breathing women that have had lived experiences with gender-based violence and not from a third removed party. So we've partnered up with amazing companies like DataWise, who make our work easy in terms of understanding the story behind the numbers that come up as gender-based violence incidences, like the demographics, the areas that cases show up in, the times in which they show up in, or the reporting spikes, as well as the frequency of these reported incidences and what they exactly are. So with this data in hand, we're able to then engage with civil society and local government, as well as local-based communities, community leaders, as well as local authorities, to create safer spaces that they might not have direct access or control over. So what's really important for us to realize is that essentially we have been analyzing the incident reporting data quite closely. And we have seen the gender-based violence places take place in concentrated areas. Like example, the Stellenbosch University precinct has shown up quite consecutively in the last couple of weeks. Areas don't show up as a trend, they show up as consecutive little hotspots. So we're essentially trying to say that a concentrated area of about 5 or so incidences make it a hotspot. However, this doesn't limit us to being able to go back and rehabilitate these areas. When we go back to the rehabilitation of these areas, we create visible representation for gender-based violence-free zones. We do this by means of a non-abrasive talking method where we chalk down messages of hope and stories of survival for not only perpetrators who walk into that space and immediately feel unsafe and unwelcome, but for the women who are victims, so that when they do walk into that space, they feel welcomed, as if they have a home, as if they have a voice, even if it means they just have to write it down on the floor.
You've mentioned quite extensively what you do with the data and how it's collected. Are there situations where there are reportable incidences that are mentioned on your portal that actually require police intervention?
Not yet, unfortunately not. We need to get to a point where we have more traffic on the website that enables our users and the user base to get to a point where their incident is able to be logged further, right? I'm not sure if that makes sense at all. But what we're trying to achieve is for our incident reporting to get to a point where we could then take it to a local CPF or involve the police in some way or form, so that it's a one-stop shop. So that Safe Space is a one-stop shop that you log on if you feel threatened. You are then able to go all the way from reporting your incident to filing the report on whatever incident you had occurred or had been part of, whether it be filing for a rape or filing for just general violence that would have happened to you. So we're trying to create holistic safe spaces, in Safe Space becoming a one-stop shop for all things gender-based violence, so that women in the LGBTIQA community know that they have a safe space with us. We fully intend on working together with stakeholders to ensure that we can make a significant dent in the pandemic that is gender-based violence and femicide. An African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so we truly believe in the resilience of our nation. And even if in a very small way, we'd like to make a difference to the fate of women who find themselves in situations of gender-based violence and femicide.
And if one of those women is actually watching our channel right now, for their benefit, could you share your website with us?
Absolutely. Please log if you are a witness, if you are a gender-based violence survivor, or you're currently feeling or you're currently in situations of gender-based violence, please make use of our website with its resources, as well as the incident reporting app. So it's www.safespacersa.com, and then our social media handles are @safespacersa on both Facebook as well as Instagram.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Nikita Delvaria, who is the co-founder of Safe Space RSA.